Hi everyone, happy Valentine's Day. Just welcome to welcome to today's having a little mouse troubles today here. Welcome to today's advanced level. This is Scott Fischetti from Geopath, and I'm here as always with Brian Schopper from Geopath.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, so I hope everybody's having a nice Friday so far, and looking forward to the weekend. Hopefully, a lot of you have a long weekend as well for the President's Day weekend. Just wanted to jump into today's session and really talk about what we're hoping to do today. And we've gotten a number of questions about like, how do I move my workflow from the legacy tools into the insights? And we thought that would be a great focus for today's session. I know typically these advanced sessions, we have a special guest as of late, and they come in and we talk about a use case, and we look more at the data and how to use the data to pull insights and to create value for your clients. But we thought it would be good for this session today, given that we've been getting questions here and there about this on how to move workflows over from ADS and like I said, O-Plan. So we're going to look at some typical workflows so you can kind of move your basic workflow to the new Insight Suite. And we're also going to talk about some frequently asked questions and give you a sense of what other features are coming down the line and things like that. So I think this session today in particular is going to work really well if there's questions. So please feel free to ask us questions as we're moving along. You can use the question widget. It's probably the best place to do it. And we'll try to answer them in line as we get them, so they're more in the moment and they're as much as possible kind of in related to what's being shown on the screen. So first I want to talk through some of the recent updates. And yesterday we went through how to use a lot of these updates, so hopefully you had a chance to join that session. If not, it's available. If not, it will be, if not already, available on our website. Brian's giving me the thumbs up that it is available on our website already. So great. So I just want to jump into to some of the updates, and then we'll jump into the workflow. So I mentioned this on the last session, so the January session, but I thought it was worth just mentioning again, just in case, because I know there's a lot of interest in this tool and a lot of use of this tool. Again, mostly by non-members, but it's also, sometimes if you don't feel like logging into the Insight Suite, you can log in here. But our Inventory Explorer tool is back up and now more mirrors the look and the feel of the Insight Suite. Again, this is a free public-facing tool, so it's very limited in its features and functionality. Oh, I keep going backwards with this mouse, so sorry about that. So it's very limited in its functionality. Basically, the goal of the tool is to really help someone understand what inventory is in any given market that they want to go explore, so they can see what audited inventory is in that market, and then use that as a way to reach out to the operators that own that inventory and start that conversation that way. To log into the tool, it requires you enter your email address, and then you'll get a one-time use password, and then you could go in and create your session there.
Just a quick thing I wanted to add. Sometimes, especially on the back of sessions, people will try to go and look in the Insight Suite and sort of follow along with some of the stuff we did. And sometimes people get these two tools confused. So the Inventory Explorer, again, is just our public-facing tool. And if you're a Geopath member, the Insight Suite is what you want to be using. You can use this, but you just won't get measures.
Yep. Great. So again, just wanted to let everybody, remind everybody that is out there. So a bunch of updates came out over the course of the last month that I would just want to give a highlight here. Like I said, Brian and I went through these in more detail yesterday, so feel free to jump into that session. And as always, if you ever have any questions, reach out to us at geekout@geopath.org. We're happy to answer any questions and help you out any way you need. So one of a nice new feature that's been added is the alerts feature. So that you can see that little bell in the screenshot, the upper right hand corner of the screenshot with the number 4 alert to it. That's the way we're going to be able to communicate a lot of messaging to the users. One thing in particular are when updates come out, you'll see, we'll post an update, and you could click on the bell to get the updates on what are the new features and functionality that have been added, things like that, bug fixes, etc. And again, just to close out and to kind of, so if you don't want to have the number 4 shown, you just click the X and it'll update each thing as red. So that's a nice feature that we're going to be using a lot more of in the future. And another helpful addition are hover states with explanations. So right here, the screenshot showing you the inventory filters, which also changed a fair amount to hopefully be a little more stepped out and more providing more kind of options for filtering for our members. But again, so there's hover states that give additional information. So if you're ever confused or wondering what do we mean by structure type or what do we mean by placement type, you can just get a little bit of more information here in that situation. And again, as I mentioned, the inventory filters there's many more options. So including format types, media types, place types, as you see here. So hopefully, again, members are finding this useful to get down to the more granular level of inventory that they want to look at. And again, I know we spent a fair amount of time on this yesterday. So again, feel free to ask questions, but go back to that if you do have questions on that. Another addition, something that was here before and is now back, is the ability to filter inventory or by media attributes. So orientation and sponge dimensions have been there, and rotating came about a month ago, and now illuminated hours is back. And so if you need to just, if you want inventory that's illuminated at certain time periods, or you want to be assured that it's illuminated for certain time periods, you can use this sliding bar scale to do that and help you filter down more quickly. And another feature that's more of an alert type of thing is, so when you, on the left side here, as you're assigning your market, I want to just make sure everybody's aware. So when you assign your market, you're essentially saying, I want my audience from this DMA or this CBSA or county. But previously, it would also auto filter your inventory for you for that market. So it would, it was a nice feature to, if you're looking at this market, do you want to also look at the geography? We've actually, do you want your inventory to be in that geography? Sorry. So we've actually put that as an alert. So it's asking you, do you want to filter by that? Because not everybody may want to do that. So I may want to be looking in New York Times Square. I may want to try to reach people who are from Los Angeles and Chicago or Boston. So you have the ability to do that with the tool. And by adding this question, we thought it would be helpful to just make sure that gets called out and people are aware of that. Some other changes to the Workspace module, some really great features here as well. The ability to add thresholds for in-market target impressions and composition index. So that's an additional filter you can add to your kind of market plan before you run the report. But the one thing I'm really excited about, and I know a lot of our members are, because we had a number of questions for these features. So in the bottom left of the screenshot, the ability to run a market plan in terms of a target impression goal, in-market impression goal, or a reach percent goal. So I know those were things that people were really excited to have back. So those are there now, and we'll actually talk about that today as well in the session. A couple additions to the inventory detail sheet I also want to point out. So also now we've added the materials option. You can see in the red box, materials there, printed mesh for this unit that we happen to call up. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's 3 different options. So printed / mesh, digital, I believe, and then mural, I think, are the material options. But I'll clarify that before the end of the call. But basically, just helping you get a sense of what the type of unit it is. Also on the inventory detail sheet, you can see the opportunity overview is back. And right now it's focused on Prism Premier segments with the goal of expanding that in the near future. But anyways, this is a great way to understand the personality, so to speak, of any given unit. You can use it for prospecting, so you can get a sense of, as you dig into these Prism segments and their personas, so to speak, and what they over-index in terms of, you can use that to help kind of hopefully prospecting, or even just tell a different story about any given unit. Another addition to the inventory detail sheet are annual average day a week impressions for people person 0+, as well as annual average hour of day impressions for any given unit. And again, this is very similar to what was in She Beta, what we introduced, probably 1.5 to 2 years ago. So again, it gives you some more insight into how that unit delivers audience. I think this is an interesting unit example right here, right? You see that big bump near the end of the day. So again, it really helps, again, go a long way to helping tell the story of a unit. So for me, or allows you to, again, be more consultative with a client on this. So this may be a good board for advertising, like I said yesterday, the Big Mac versus an Egg McMuffin, because you get that big bump in the evening hours. So again, may help with ideas on messaging, et cetera, as well. Another feature that's back that I'm personally very excited about is the top contributing zip codes, as you can see on the left side of the dual maps that we have up here. So the top 4 zip codes and top 4 contributing DMAs are there and back, and gives you a sense of the percent that each one's drawing. But on the right side, when you click map it, you can now have all the zip codes that draw any level of audience from that unit mapped. And also, as you scroll over them, it gives you a sense of what the zip code is and the percent that it's contributing. Got a question before about, can I export this data? Not yet. You can, not quite yet. But again, there is the information here that you can scroll over and see which zip code is contributing audience. And then I think there's only one more. Yep. So also, you may have noticed recently that and this is a kind of cropped screenshot of the Explore module, or when you're looking at inventory. So we've added some summary measures, and relabeled a number of them for clarification purposes as well. So again, with any of this, if you do have any questions, always reach out. We do want to jump into the main topic for today's session, and hopefully you've seen our Valentine's Day base map. So that's available in the Insight Suite as well. If you go to Layers and Display Options, you can have this as your base map for today. And it does bring up a point too. So if there are base maps that you would like, again, please let us know if there's base maps that would be helpful, for you and for your clients, or just things that you might find interesting that you're like, hey, I wanted to create a map and share this with you. So definitely let us know. This is a fun one for today and very appropriate. So just wanted to make that point as well. So Brian's gonna jump in, and we're gonna start talking about our workflow and how do we move it from ADS and OPlan into the new Insight Suite.
All right. Sorry, let me just get this all switched over to the Insight Suite here. Make that full screen. So yeah, as we were saying, or as Scott was mentioning, today is basically about making sure that everyone knows, when this transition happens, and as this transition keeps continuing to happen, that everyone knows what they, where they need to go to pull what they need. So a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is just comparing to the old systems, showing you how to pull similar things. And like Scott mentioned, addressing some frequently asked questions, because the more frequently they come up, the more it tells us that we should be clear to everyone about the answers to them, and address them in things like this. So and also, as Scott mentioned, if you have questions, please toss them into the questions widget. It'll help make this session even more valuable for everyone. So anything you think of, you can toss in there. So a majority of what we're going to be doing today is going to take place in the Workspace module. We'll touch on the Explore module a little bit, just because I want to answer some questions there. But a majority of what we'll be doing will be Workspace based. So I'm just going to head right to there, and we'll start our walkthrough here. So 2 things I want to point out. We get this question kind of a lot. Basically, I was able to do this in OPlan, or I was able to do this in ADS before. How do I do that in the Insight Suite? The simple answer is that if you come to the Workspace module, The market plan is all of the O-plan functionality. That's where the O-plan functionality has evolved and where it lives in the Insights suite. And then an inventory plan is where the ADS functionality or that kind of functionality lives. So if you're ever kind of questioning which one of those to do or where that is, that's here. So I'll go through each of those and we'll kind of talk through it. So let's just start with the market plan. The way that the Workspace module works is everything is sort of set up within projects and scenarios. So you can see here, actually, these are all my old projects, all my existing projects. And within each of those, I have one or multiple scenarios. And there's a lot of flexibility with how you can set these up. You know, a project could be all one client, and then scenarios within that could be maybe different campaigns you worked on for them, or maybe it's, you know, a market that you're working on as the project, and a couple different inventory sets might be the different scenarios. So there are a lot of different ways that you can actually set this up and make it work for you. And it's really just about what works for you. So I made an example, or I made myself a project in preparation for this because I wanted to show a few specific things, because there's a couple sort of common workflows that we think people might want to do, and we just want to highlight how to do those. So before we get into any like specific common things like that, I just want to do at a high level what a market plan is, how it works, and same thing for inventory plan. So when you're within a project like I am here, you can see my existing scenarios, but I'm going to make a new scenario now. So to do that, I can hit either add market plan or add inventory plan. When you make one, you have the option to do both. They're just kind of tabs that live next to each other, but they work completely independently of each other. So that's actually something that I've gotten asked a couple times. You know, if I run things for one market and one set of audiences in this market plan, does that affect my inventory plan or anything like that? And it definitely doesn't. It's just, you can have them in the same scenario and they're right next to each other, but they're totally independent. So let's start with the market plan. We will call this just example market plan.
And as Brian's doing that, and the intent is to have all of your information clustered in one area. So in this scenario, you can see here, you have a market plan, inventory plan, and you can ultimately even bring in a set of places as well. So then it's all confined into one space, and you don't have to go hunting around in different tools or in different modules to find your information.
So right here, we're looking at a fresh a fresh market plan. You can see these are the tabs that Scott was just mentioning and that I mentioned earlier, how you can switch between both the market plan and an inventory plan. And as Scott said, you can add places here. So again, just to reiterate, a market plan is where O-plan has evolved and it now lives in our new system. And so this is pretty much the same kind of inputs and features on the way to creating a plan that O-plan had. So you basically run all of the same kind of things to get the same kind of results. And to actually run things, you start in this top left-hand corner and you start with market, and then you can just work across to the right and then down. So I can just run a little example scenario. So let's just choose a market. So to start, you add market, and I'll just choose Chicago, add as an individual. By default, it'll have the person 0+ audience. And as a side note, that's the total audience for the Insight Suite. Anytime you see something say total audience, it's always against person 0+. So I'm going to add another audience here, and I'll just go from my saved audiences because I know I have an 18+ audience here that I saved. So we'll do that. I don't really, I can leave person 0+, maybe I will for this example. So you could add operator, just like if you're in O-plan and you wanted to look at only the inventory of a specific operator, you could do that. But the way I'm kind of running it, the way I'm setting it up here is I just want to look at the market and go based off that. But there are many different ways that you could actually utilize this.
So just to jump in too, as we look back at O-plan, right? Previously, you can, I know Brian added Chicago, but if you needed to, you could add multiple markets and run multiple reports at the same time for each of those markets. And you could see here, he's already added multiple audiences as well. And then previously with O-plan, right, you would have to drag over all the operators that you wanted to look at. So here it does that automatically for you.
Yep.
So if you wanted to just kind of look at an individual operator, you can, but it's automatically going to look at all operators for you.
And I suppose it ultimately matters it ultimately depends on what you're trying to do with your market plan. If you yourself are an operator or a media owner and you want to say, you know, okay, I have a group of benches or something in this market, they're my inventory, and I just want to see, you know, how many units do I need to get my TRP goal or something like that, you could use this for that. But if, say, you were on the agency side and you were doing just sort of straight up market exploration, this is how you could do that too, and sort of forego adding an operator and just look at everyone in the market. So there are a couple different use cases depending on sort of where you are within the industry and what you need it for. But just to sort of catch back up, we've got our markets added. I've got some audiences here. Again, you could add operators if you wanted. I'm not going to for this one. So media type builder, this as with the audience selector that I used a second ago, this mirrors what it looks like in the Explore module. So this is set up as the same way as the new inventory filters within the Explore module. But so there's a couple different things in here. I could talk through these, but it might take a little bit. So the operator media names, it's kind of an easy place to go if you have some familiar looking names that you were trying to find, or if there's something like a phrase that you would use for these in media types. We've kind of bucketed them here and restructured a little bit how we did the filters. But if you're looking for a specific media type and you don't see it, it might be in this operator media name. But for example, let's say I just want to do, I'll do posters and maybe junior posters. Sure. So I'm going to add those two as individuals. I could add them as a group together. So you wanted to package them together. So then after that, you have a couple more filter options that you can use. So these threshold sliders, basically, you can just say, I only want impressions of a certain range, or I only want an index of a certain range. So I don't want units that don't meet that criteria for this audience.
And just to jump in, so these thresholds are a new feature
Yes.
that
Yes.
wasn't previously in O-Plan. And another thing I think that, you know, Brian did mention this, but again, I think it is unique to the new tool as well, is the ability to group inventory types together, right? So maybe you look at transit shelters and benches and receptacles, kind of in your mind, they're the same thing, you know, even though they may be wildly different. I don't, you know, I'm sorry, maybe that wasn't the best example to use, but you can add those as a group, and it's going to look at that as one set of inventory that it's looking across that, except not each one individually. So again, it's the type of thing, if you look at certain types of inventory a certain way, you have the ability to do that within your organization.
And so you can see I actually did that here. So I've got it was transit shelters, benches, and like Scott mentioned, receptacles. So I just made a group of those just to see. And it's entirely feasible that these markets and these media types might not line up. But if that's the case, it just will show me that there's no inventory. There's also another feature that you could use O-Plan for, just to see sort of the amount of inventory in a certain type in a certain market, and something that you can do here as well. So beyond those threshold filters, right down here, we have this drop down, and this is a newly expanded feature as well. So before we could only plan on TRP goals for the market plan, but here you can either say, okay, I have this level of TRPs I want to reach for my plan, or you could have a target in-market impression goal, or you could even have a reach percentage goal that you wanted to say, so I wanted to reach 25% of each of these markets. How many, or 25% of the 18 plus audience in these markets, how many units do I need? So let's do exactly that. Let's use that as the example. So 25. I'm going to leave my plan length as 1 week. I'll leave my effective reach and everything else that's down here, and I'll just hit generate plans. And so you can see it basically buckets it out by market. So you can see plan A, or 1A, 2A, and 3A, and that's the A is reflective of whatever audience I've selected. So that's my first audience, but if I selected 18 plus, it would show 1B, 2B, and 3B. So as these kind of load, it'll start to fill in. So we'll see, basically it'll tell us the amount of units we'll need to get at least my goal. So my goal was 25. So this one, I have a feeling it might not reach for, let's see. So you can just see it splits it between the media types here. So this one was just rounding up. That was kind of the closest it got me. But so you can see if I wanted about 23% reach against person 0+ in the Dallas market, I would need 30 posters and 67 junior posters in this case. Or let's say if we did the 18 plus audience and we looked at Chicago, for example. So to get my 25% reach, let's see, I would need, it's got my 3 media types here. But what you could do if you wanted to update this or edit this, you know, say I sort of wanted to look at less media types, you could. You could just go back to edit and you can remove some of the media types. But just to show you, so since I'm looking at posters, if you hit this operators drop down here, it'll show you everyone who has inventory in that market of that type. So this is just kind of one of the things that you can use O-Plan for, or sorry, not O-Plan, the market plan for against sort of O-Plan functionality.
Before you leave that, Brian, could you open up one of the reports again?
Yeah.
And even after you run it, you may also want to do some other things. So right where you are running, like maybe you just want to see what happens if I make posters 0 or 50, or you know, so you can do it the other way and see what happens. And
Update.
you know, I think it's also important that, and I apologize if you mentioned this already, to talk about the different metrics there. So TRP, the reach percent. Reach net, so that's just the actual number of people, and then frequency and in-market target impressions.
And you can see, so I had a goal of 25% reach, and I put 0 posters. I changed my mind. I don't want posters anymore. So basically, the tool will just reallocate that same percentage across your other media types. So here it's saying it's splitting it between junior posters and then that benches, transit shelters, receptacle group. Let's say I change my mind even more. I don't want that. I just want junior posters. So how many junior posters would I need to get 25% reach? And again, this is just kind of the thing, this is right in line with the kind of things that you could do in O-Plan, this kind of back and forth sort of pre-planning and figuring out. So you can see 155 junior posters, there's 900 something in the market. And you can just kind of see the overall metrics for what that would return.
So just before we leave, can you go up to the edit area, Brian? A couple of questions about when will we be able to add multiple characteristics to create a demo. So, for example, the person wanted to do like age 25 to 54 with children. So there, some of that functionality is we're working towards that. For any of the demos that you have in the legacy tools, you can replicate those today. So, you know, certain age and gender and household income breakdowns. But when we're getting beyond some of those, we are working towards that. And then a question about what if you just want to look at the reach or TRP level? Is there a way to turn off the sliders? So essentially the sliders where they are are kind of, you know, they're the widest breadth that you can get from anything. So essentially they're quote unquote off, so to speak. And then hopefully, you know, within the ability to, you know, choose a TRP goal or a plan or a reach goal, et cetera, you can hopefully get to what you need there. And hopefully I answered that question right. If I didn't, just kind of ping us back again.
Any other?
Just a question about transit, when that is coming. So that is definitely on its way. And, you know, I need to go back to the roadmap, but the goal, I believe, is before April to have that in there, in the tool. So the transit inventory should be there in the next month or two. But I can, before the end of the call, I'll get you a better response to that question.
Okay, great. Yeah, so this is just kind of how you can run a market plan and sort of how you can do some similar things to what you could do in O-Plan. And if anybody has continued questions about that, please send them in. So let's jump now to an inventory plan and talk through how to do that. So as I mentioned at the beginning, an inventory plan is really in line with the ADS functionality from our legacy system, ADS, and where you could run reach frequency, things like that. So basically an inventory plan works when you actually have a set of inventory that you want to look at. So you could either have it by, you know, an Excel sheet of, let me see if I have any that I could pop up and use.
So as you're doing that, Brian, a question came in about the time spans. Is there going to be ability to have a longer time spans than 12 weeks? And And yes, that functionality is coming in the next couple of weeks. The ability to actually even get down to spot level schedule. So if different in a plan, if different spots need to run, some need to run for 4 weeks, some need to run kind of 8 weeks, etc. And they may be kind of, one starts and then ends, and then right after that, a different spot starts and ends. So even the ability to stack them like that is coming, and it should be there, at the latest mid-March, but probably sooner than that, just looking at the roadmap.
Mm-hmm. So like I was saying, an inventory plan works best, or works really well when you have a set of inventory that you're looking at. So either an inventory set that you created while you were in the Explore module and you sort of did some filtering there, or say you just have an Excel sheet, or you have just something from an email of like a list of bulletins that you're looking at. There are a couple different ways to actually look at specific inventory in here. So I'll show how to do that, but let me just talk through some of the overall features first, and then we'll go through. And so just to sort of high level, I just wanted to show how to do a market plan and an inventory first. And then we'll go through and talk about some kind of common workflows that I think might be helpful for people. So I just wanted to give sort of an in-depth refresher on all of this. So to do an inventory plan, just like with a market plan, start in the top left and work across and then down. So audience, so when you click into the audience field, it'll give you all of your saved audiences here, or then let you create a new audience. I'm just going to go based on my based on an 18 plus audience that I already have. So I'll hit apply here. Let's see. Sorry, just 1 second. So we've got our audience. So market. So let's see, add market. And again, this is set up just like it is in the market plan. Same thing with the audience selector. It all mirrors itself across the different modules. So for this one, the set of inventory that I found was in, I'm going to butcher the name of this. It's in Cabarrus County, North Carolina. So I'm going to find that. And this is actually a little tip that I always like to show people. So if you're using the county sort of designations as your market, and you wanted to look only at the counties in a specific state, if you type the state abbreviation and then a comma, it will sort of auto filter out everything that's not from that state. So let me find Cabarrus County, or however you say it. I'm spelling it wrong. Is it North Carolina? Let me find it. Oh, hold on. DMA. I'll just do here. I'll just pick something. We'll do Chicago because I can't find it. I think I was misspelling it or something. So again, so you set your audience, you set your market. Again, you have the ability to change your number of weeks here. Everything that you do at the top here can be changed. So it's not like you set something up and it runs and you can't go back and change it. So whatever you put in here, you can change along the way. So I've got that set up how I want it for right now. So add custom goals. This is just a little area for you to sort of keep track of maybe what the RFP said, or what the goals that you're looking for this campaign are. So say if I had a TRP goal of maybe 50 or something, I could put that in, or I wanted, at least like 15% reach. These are just, again, a little spot for you to leave notes for yourself. They don't affect anything with how it runs, but it's just so you can sort of keep track of what you wanted from this scenario. So I've got this all set up, and now let me just add some inventory. And again, as I mentioned, there are a couple different ways that you can do this. You can do it by Geopath spot ID. So if you had a bunch of Geopath IDs, you can just paste those in here. If you had an operator IDs, or if you had operator IDs, same thing, just paste those in, either from like an Excel sheet or an email, and it'll parse those out for you. And then you have your option to load saved inventory sets. And this is just, anything that you saved as an inventory set in the Explore module, or sort of in here even. So this is all of your saved ones. So let me just see if I have any from Chicago that I could use. Something with gamers. Let's do that. Add selected units. So I'm going based off of just an inventory set that I pulled in the past. We're looking at persons 18 plus, Chicago. So, okay, so there's 20 spots in this. Okay, so we can see here now that I've loaded my actual units. you can see the actual planned delivery for all of these. So the total impressions, the TRPs, the reach percentage, the frequency. So if you wanted to, now what I was mentioning earlier, it's not sort of set in stone. Say I wanted to say, okay, let me see 4-week numbers instead. For some of these, they're duplicative, so you could multiply, but things like reach and frequency, they're not necessarily. So you can see our impressions have multiplied by 4, but our reach and frequency numbers have updated. So you can do that here, up here as well. A couple more things that you can do here. You can deselect any units you don't want in your inventory set. And if you do that, you have the option to basically save as a different inventory set or save over that. So say there's like a group of perms that you want and you're kind of swapping out units, or maybe you're, creating a subset of that for a particular RFP or something like that. You could do that kind of feature using this. Another really important thing is the customized columns feature, because there are a ton of different metrics that you can have in your report, not all of which are loaded by default just for space reasons. So if you hit that customized columns button, you can see here as I scroll through, there are a lot of different metrics that you can add to your report. If you wanted to, you could just spam the button and add them all in. And you can see they're down here at the bottom now. I have the ability to drag them around or hit the X's and remove them. So I'll just hit apply changes. And so an important little note, whatever you have in your columns here is what will export. So if it's not in your columns, it won't export by default. So just if you're looking for a metric and you don't find it, that's probably why.
And we get a question every once in a while about this. Like, let's say there's certain columns you always want.
Mm-hmm.
And do I, can I set that as a global change for all of my projects in the workspace? And right now you can't, but you probably do within the project.
Yeah, there's kind of a
scenario
workaround for that kind of thing. And I'll sort of touch on that kind of thing with a couple of the scenarios that I've got set up. So there is a way to kind of work around that. For a lot of the features that are coming, there are kind of ways that you can sort of intuit and work ways around it for right now. And we'll talk through some of that. So just one more thing to note, if you are making changes to your inventory plan, I always recommend hitting save scenario just kind of along the way. And then say you're happy with this, you've got everything you want here, you can just hit export scenario and export to CSV. And then this will just carry right over to an Excel sheet and you can just open it up there. So again, this is mirroring the functionality of ADS, and this is where it has evolved to be from ADS to here. I mean, in my opinion, I think that this is a lot more straightforward of a setup. I think that this is kind of less things you have to sort of get through to get to the actual report, which I think is nice. So let me go back and actually talk through some specific scenarios of just like different things that you can do. Some things that I think people might do a lot. So I set up a couple scenarios in here with the intention of using as examples. So as Scott was saying, what if there's like a common thing that you like to have as a sort of a common scenario that you come back to? So for example, if there's a custom market that you use a lot and you want to keep coming back to it and you don't want to set it up every time, how can I do that? Or say there's a set of like permanent, like you have a set of perms that you use all the time, it never changes, but maybe the audience changes, maybe the time frame changes. So how do I set this sort of inventory set as the common thing and just go based off of that every time? So there are a couple different ways that you can do things like that. So I set up 2 different scenarios here. Let's just take a look at this one. I'm not going to do much within this one just to show you what it is. So for this one, I basically, can I show? Yes. Okay. So for this one, like I was saying, what if you had a custom market that you wanted to use all the time? There is a way to make a combined market. So if you were to go to add market, and then you can, so this is based on county right now, but if I were to click multiple, I could add these 3 counties as a group. That's my custom market. But you can see here now I've got this combined markets drop down. So just for example, and this kind of comes up a lot just because people in the New York market often want to sort of group the 5 boroughs of New York together, which conveniently enough are 5 different counties. So I just made a combined market of each of those 5 counties. You can see that that's here. So, doesn't really matter what I did with the rest of this scenario, but just wanted to show you, I had those 5 counties. So we'll leave this page. But so say you wanted to always use those 5 counties. say you wanted to have that New York market, for example, as something that you could always come back to. You didn't want to have to set that up every time. You didn't want to have to like look for everything. There's a feature in here that I don't think a lot of people know about. This sort of spillover menu here, these dots. If you click duplicate scenario, I can do this and I can make this just NYC custom market, and then I can save that. And basically it'll duplicate the scenario. It'll make me a new one. And basically I've got my combined markets here. I've got 18 plus if I wanted it, but I can just go and I could remove all these inventory sets if I didn't want to have an inventory set or something like that. Say I just wanted persons 18 plus and New York, and I wanted to save this as sort of a template scenario. This is a way that you could do that. And again, you can do this in a couple different applications too. So I've got my NYC custom market. This is just my template there, but so you could do that for anything like that you have a sort of common custom area that you wanted to keep. Or in a different scenario, this one, say you have a set of perms that you wanted to keep, and it's always the same. It's always the same group of, I don't even know how many are in this one. Let's see when this loads, but 29. Say you have this group of 29. It's always the same. So what you could do is, say you have a scenario like this. I'll go back. I just wanted to, oops, too far. I just wanted to open that up so I could show you what was in it first. But again, just like with the other one, say you have your set of perms and you want that to be its own template scenario. So you could hit duplicate scenario and you could just call it Atlanta poster perms. Sure. And then you can just call it that, and that could be your template scenario. So then once that loads up, so from here, if I always have these 29 loaded in here. So then all I would need to do if I wanted to basically test them out a bunch of different audiences, or maybe I wanted to see the audience draw from a different market where these units aren't, I could do that and use the same set of units here. So that's just kind of one way that you could set up some constant templates for yourself where you can always sort of come back to sort of common things like that.
And just one thing to add too, so you could do it in the scenario, but you can also back out and do it at the project level too. So
yeah.
Maybe, so if you don't want to have a bunch of different scenarios copied within your template project, you can just start from that level and just say, as you go over any project, you can say, if you right click, you can say duplicate. Oops.
Yeah, here we go. It's that little, it's this little page icon right on there.
So it just duplicates that project.
Right.
So that's, you can even start at that level, and then it's even cleaner than that.
Sure. Yeah, and you could always, if there's like a set of things that you do for every RFP, you could set up a project that is just all of the different individual pieces and duplicate that and fill it in with the aspects of the RFP itself. So there's a lot of different things that you can do to make some common practices for yourself and make it sort of fit what you need it for, and sort of make it more custom to your needs.
And apologize if you said this already too. I know in ADS there was a limit of, I think, 300 spots.
Yes.
So that's it's 6,000 now. So there's a lot more flexibility in being able to pull in inventory and export inventory. So hopefully you'll find that a nice improvement over the old tool. As well, I personally feel like that just the way we add demos in, it's a little more straightforward than in ADS.
I agree.
I personally found that a little bit confusing at times. So hopefully making the crosstabs or things like that for adding demos is easier. And that is actually the functionality with that's going to actually improve over time as well. So that's going to get a lot easier. I was just actually talking about some of the comparisons between the old tool and the new tool. And I know Brian's talked about this ability to add the custom markets. It's kind of the workaround for that, and hopefully that is a workaround for the short term. And then I just in terms of other things like CPM metrics. I know that was in ADS. That is coming down the line as well. Should be in the tool around mid-April at this point. It's on the roadmap for. And also in turn, I mentioned about the spot schedules. And, somebody actually messaged me as I was talking about that, about the ability to put calendar dates. And I do believe that is the intention of how you will be scheduling. It will be around calendar dates. Am I right, Brian?
Yeah,
I think that.
Everything will still be based off of, or all the data will still be based off of the same annual average. So, even though it has calendar dates, there won't be a sense of seasonality, but you can sort of stagger your campaigns. Say you want these units for this 2 weeks and then these units for the following 2 weeks. So you can set that up that way.
Right. And I know in ADS, there were a couple of columns like in market 1 week impressions, total week impressions, TRP weekly, that auto generated in the reports. Right now you have the ability to set the reports and get that information. Those 3 columns in particular don't like automatically export, but the workaround is being able to run it as a 1 week report. And then if you have a multi-week report, run it that way as well. So just a couple of kind of truing up, talking about like some of the functionality in ADS and Insight Suite. So those are a couple of points I wanted to know as well.
And there's kind of one more big thing that's a common question we get all the time. And I just want to make sure, because it's something that you can do kind of easily. People ask me all the time, how do you export from the Insight Suite? And there are a couple different ways that you can do that. So since I'm still in the Workspace module, let me just go back to one of the things I was looking at here. So when you're within the Workspace module, let's go back to which one example we were doing. I think this is the example market plan. So this was when we were going through in a more in-depth way and was talking through everything. So we've got just here in this example, Chicago market, 18 plus, I've got some 20 something units here. So to export from the Workspace module, you have to be doing an inventory plan. There isn't really much you can export from a market plan. I mean, you can, but it'll export the inventory plan things. So when you're in the Workspace module and you're looking at the inventory plan, you have all your things here. Like I said, it's just super easy. Export scenario and download as CSV, and it'll just download. It'll actually download based, the name will download based on whatever the project or scenario name. I think it's a scenario name. So here, I can try that to confirm it. So I'll hit download, and I think it'll download as example MP on my computer. Yeah, so you can see right there. I'm going to open it up since it's over here. I might need to drag it onto the other screen. 1 second. Yeah. So you can see it just exports, just like it's pretty much exactly how from the ADS module, everything used to export. So got some sort of scenario level things here just to explain what you're looking at. And then that's just the context of the data. And then here's the data itself. So that's one way to do it. Again, export scenario and then download as CSV. But let's say you're not even in the Workspace module. Say you don't even want to come here and do that. Maybe you just want person 0+ impressions. Maybe you don't even want to use the Workspace module. You like using the Explore module better. There are 2 ways that you can export here. Oh, you know what, here, I think I have, 1 second. So I just have to clear this. But there are 2 different ways that you can basically export your data within the Explore module. So once this loads back up, I'm going to navigate myself to that saved inventory set that I was using in that inventory plan, just so we can see it, since it was something similar. Here, let me just hit refresh real quick.
And as the screen's refreshing too, we also get questions at times about some of the columns, like the definitions and what do they mean. And so just so everybody's aware, we're putting together some definitions that will be able to go along with the, hopefully within the export, if not just be available within the Insight Suite, that gives a bit of more of a description of what we mean by each column, so that there's no confusion.
Yeah, sorry, just apologies on this. This is my fault. I had a scenario that I was working on in here earlier and I didn't clear it. And so I'm just trying to get myself caught back up to that. Sorry, we're almost there.
You know, just as another question that came in, you know, and it was a good one, something I did want to mention too. I know in ADS you could do multiple, you can do an export of multiple demos for a plan, and you know, I know right now you have to go in and run each one separately. That again is a functionality that is coming soon and should be in definitely by the conference, so by mid-April, again, if not a little bit sooner than that. So I know there's times where people want to add like a couple, you know, you have multiple markets and you want to look at your metrics for that market, or again, to this question across that demo, and just have the report generate one with all of that info in it. So so that is coming hopefully by mid-April is what I see on the roadmap.
So apologies for that hang up. I should have cleared all this before I started, but okay, so I just loaded up the same inventory set in Chicago that I was using in that example in my workspace. So there are two different ways that you can export from the Explore module itself. If you have this right-hand menu open, this Spot Summary List menu, and you go to this Save As dropdown, you can come right down to the bottom here and hit Download as CSV, and that'll export all of the available columns. So if you remember when I was mentioning in in the Workspace module in the inventory plan, that only the columns that you have added will export. If you download from this menu here and you hit Download CSV on the right-hand side, it'll download everything, all the available columns. Make full screen again. So all the available columns will download. That's one way to do it. And then the second way, there's actually, and I don't think a lot of people know about this, or I hope to make more people know about this, is that there's this little up arrow in the bottom left-hand corner. And this is basically just a grid view, like a tabular view of the data, or of the units in sort of a more data sense. And so you can see we're looking at this group of 20 here. I didn't set it against an audience or anything like that. I just kind of pulled up the inventory set. But this is basically set up the same way that the inventory plan was in the Workspace module, where if you want a column added, you have a lot more options here that are not added by default. So you can just add those here, it'll add a bunch there, apply changes again, and it'll add whatever you've added to your columns here. And then again, save as, and then download as CSV. So again, just to reiterate, if you're in this bottom view, just like with the Workspace module, you have to make sure you have all the columns that you want if you want them to export. But if you export from this right-hand menu over here, download and then download a CSV, it'll just export all available columns. But you can export data and pull a report in 3 different ways from the Insights Suite. But I just want to make sure everyone knows where those are. Cool. And I don't know if there were any extra or leftover questions.
Yeah, we've been trying to address the questions as they come along, and some of them we've just replied directly to the person. But I think largely the ones that are kind of relevant for everybody, we've hopefully gotten those. But just as we're winding down, please feel free to type in any questions. Hopefully this was helpful for everyone. And this, I think, is something we will come back to as another session, maybe in another month or two, as some of these other features that we've asked about or that I mentioned are kind of on the roadmap. As they're fully implemented in the tool, we will do a good question.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry. And this is something I think we've done in other sessions, but it's definitely worthwhile given the special Valentine's Day map. We want to make sure everybody's using that today.
Very apropos.
So this is a question on how do I get that base map, that Valentine's Day base
map. Layers and display options. Yeah. And just sort of as a quick aside, layers and display options is how you control pretty much everything visually on your map here. So display options, and then here are the base maps, and we can just change our map to show the Valentine's Day map.
And there's definitely, and I just can you keep that open, Brian? So there's some really interesting ones here. Like I like the pop art one. It's very
it's really
Liechtenstein looking, right? Once it comes up, and then the blueprint, and even the minimal one. I think if you might want to zoom out on that. The minimal one is, I think, a really interesting one that will have a lot of uses as well. It's just a very clean map without any roads or anything like that. So you can do a lot with this map, I think, when you're starting to use it as well. And I think are you going to do a?
Yeah, I just want to show that you can
side by side.
You can have two simultaneous maps, each with their completely independent controls. So you can see I set to, or I can sync them up so they're at the same level. But basically, you can have two different maps. You can have different base maps, different inventory added as different layers. So there's a lot that you can do here. Yeah. So as Scott was mentioning, the minimal map has no roadways, just towns and state boundaries and things like that. So very minimal.
Right. And again, a lot of these kind of more deep dives into these features, we tend to, and this ties into another question that we got or in the chat about how frequently do we do these trainings. So we do these monthly trainings, and every month there's a foundational session and an advanced session. So the foundational session really focuses in more deeply on like how to use the tool, how to use the updates, how to navigate the system. And then typically the advanced session is more of a use case that analyzes the data that we pulled the day before in the foundational session and talks about, how do you answer a client question using that data. This one in particular, for this month, we thought given the number of questions and the transition into the Insight Suite with the legacy data or legacy tools going away eventually, we thought it'd be a good session to do kind of a moving your workflow for the advanced session. And so we will do this, and we'll jump back to the deck in a second, which will talk about the next set of sessions. But we do these every month, and previously they were the last Thursday and Friday of every month, but just given the cadence of the updates, we thought it would be best to move them to mid-month. So next month will be March 12th and March 13th. So similarly, roughly that second week of the month, because it brings it closer to when the new releases come out. So we didn't want to have new things come out and then everyone have to wait 2 to 3 weeks to find out about them or to have a work session around it. So hopefully that's helpful.
And as Scott was saying at the beginning, if anybody missed yesterday's session or any of our past sessions and you just want to catch up, if you go to our website, geopath.org, and then the Geek Out tab right at the top and you scroll down to the bottom, we've got links to our YouTube channel with all the past sessions. Or if you just go on YouTube and you search Geopath, you'll find our channel. And so we have all of our past sessions up there as well, including yesterday's as of this morning, and I'll get this one up later today. So if anybody wants to rewatch it or share it with your teammates who couldn't make it, you can do that.
And the way we, another question that came in is, how do I find out about these sessions? So we typically announce them in our newsletter, and we send out reminders and sign up links. So if you're not on our newsletter, if you want to go to the next slide, Brian, email us at geekout@geopath.org, and we can make sure you're on our newsletter. But anybody who has any login credentials to our tool, any of our tools, should be getting the newsletter as well. But we can double check if you just want to email us there, and we can just make sure and double confirm that you're on there as well. So thank you everyone for the questions. It's super helpful for us to hear the questions that are coming in. Hopefully you all found this helpful session. And like I said, Brian and I, we're kind of brainstorming the sessions moving forward. And I do think this will be another one within the next 2 to 3 months to come back to and do an update of the kind of workflow. So again, hope everybody has a great Valentine's Day, a great weekend, and thank you again for joining, and thank you again for all the questions.
All right, thanks everyone.
Cheers.